Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us at this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Rosie and I'm the Senior Copywriter here at Your Overseas Home. It's great to have you all with us today, whether you're watching live or catching up on demand. In this webinar, we'll be chatting with experts we consider essential for a safe and secure property purchase. They are Michael Lucas, a Senior Account Manager at Smart Currency Exchange, a specialist in international property purchases, and Sophia Vicent, a lawyer at Matlaw. We were due today to be joined by an estate agent. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, our expert is unavailable. We do sincerely apologise for this unexpected change and any inconvenience it may cause. However, myself and our experts will do our best to answer any questions that you might have. Before we get started, this session will largely follow a question and answer format where we'll talk to each guest speaker in turn. At the end of the webinar, we'll open the floor up to any questions. If you have any as we go along, feel free to type in the questions tab that's just on the right-hand side of your screen. We do hope to answer as many questions as we can today, but if we don't get around to them all, don't worry. Any unanswered questions will be forwarded to our experts. I would also like to mention that this webinar is being recorded and you can catch up on demand if you wish. It will go live, obviously, when we're finished. So, Michael, if you could introduce yourself and Smart Currency and how you can help our viewers today.
Hi, Rosie. Yeah, thank you. So, similar to your introduction at the start, so I'm a Senior Account Manager at Smart Currency Exchange. I've worked in the foreign currency industry for about 10 years now. Smart Currency is a company that helps people move their currency overseas and help them to manage their risk involved when buying property and obviously all the things that come along with it.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And Sophia, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself and how Matlaw can help our viewers today.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Rosie. My name is Sophia. As Rosie explained, I work for Matlaw. I'm an associate lawyer based in Lisbon, but we also have offices in the Algarve. And we are a law firm specialized in real estate law, immigration law, and all kinds of matters that may help you buy safely in Portugal and even relocate if that's the case.
Lovely, thank you so much. Okay, so let's get into some questions. Let's start by learning about the currency exchange and your property purchase. So, Michael, coming to you first. Can you tell me about the pound to euro rate? What's affecting it right now? Is the pound particularly strong?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it is strong at the moment. We're currently seeing levels just over 2-year highs. So there's a few reasons why we're seeing that. The main one is our own election in a couple of weeks' time. So elections generally are one of the biggest causes of volatility when it comes to currencies. You can imagine it revolves around how the country is going to be run going forwards, and the uncertainty around that can cause volatility, both good and bad, as it develops. So we've got our own election, and we've also got the elections in France. Now, the French elections are what's caused the recent jump up that we've seen, so where the markets have gone above 118. Of course, there's talk of, the announcement of the snap election itself was a surprise, hence the sudden move. But of course, there is a lot of talk of Marine Le Pen's right-wing party potentially getting the majority in the next election, and the potential of that has weakened the euro. So that has moved the rate in our favour if you are buying the euro. So that's the main thing that's causing volatility. On top of that, though, the Bank of England's interest rate decision was today. They've announced that they're going to keep interest rates where they are for now, but they are speaking about starting to reduce them as you know, the year goes on, possibly August when they look to do that. The talk of them reducing them has dropped the rate a little bit out of the pound's favour, but it may only be temporary. Those are the main sort of things affecting it at the moment. But then you've also got other things as well, smaller stuff as in less recent, as in the war in Ukraine still going on, the Gaza conflicts that are less relevant than they were before, but you know, still affecting the rates on a daily basis.
Okay, good to know. So highest in 2 years. Good news for people buying in Portugal. Okay, so when you're looking to set a budget to buy a property over there, am I right that you don't get the rate that you see on the news?
That's correct, yeah. So if you were to Google the exchange rate today, you'd see what's called the market rate, or also the interbank rate. So if you were a bank or a big organization that buys billions and billions of pounds worth of currency a year, then you're able to achieve close to that market rate. Whereas as a consumer, myself included, you're buying comparatively a lot less, and so the rates available to you are comparatively lower as well. So you won't quite be at that 118 level that you see posted online, but you'll be somewhere close to it.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. And presuming that I'm not taking a suitcase full of cash, can you share with us the rough process when buying a property in Portugal?
Yeah, absolutely. So going from the very start, of course, you want to research your location, find out what area is right for you, and then find a property online. Obviously, you can get together a short list of properties that you want to view when you go over there. Once you do, then set up a viewing trip to go over, see the properties in person, and see make sure they're right for you and that you like the area now you've seen it in person. From there, of course, you negotiate on the price and hopefully have an offer that's accepted. From that point, from offer accepted through to completing, depends on the property, of course. The average, I'd say, is minimum sort of 3 months. Can be as much as 9 months if the property is perhaps off plan or still being built. But that's obviously quite a big range, but it is very much based on the individual circumstance. And then at the end of that period, then of course you'll be completing and you'll need to pay the full balance of the funds over.
Okay, great. And what are buyers' different transfer options in terms of paying their deposit or the full balance?
Yeah, so quite often it depends on from country to country. Usually when you've had an offer accepted, you'll often need to pay a reservation fee to sort of take it off the market, show you're serious about the purchase. Often maybe a month or so later, you're expected to pay a deposit as well. Sometimes it's 10%, other countries it can be more, and that's, as I said, maybe a month or so after. And then when you complete, you'll pay balance. So there's a couple of options you've got for moving the money through us. There are what were called spot contracts, and therefore, if you wanted to just have money moved straight away, so if you needed to pay money immediately, you could come to us and say, let's say you need to make a little reservation deposit, a few €1,000. You could say, right, I need €3,000 to be moved over to Portugal. We quote you the exchange rate and what the cost in pounds is. And if you want to do that, you book it in, you pay us your pounds, and then the euros can be paid across straight away, or you can hold them with us for a time if you need to as well. That's absolutely fine. So those are spot contracts where the money's sent straight away. You also have forward contracts, which you may have read about if you've done any reading on the currency side of things, which is where you're able to secure the exchange rate you need for the amount of currency, but for a date in the future, rather than having to pay for it all up front. So generally, we'd ask for the first 5% of whatever you're sending as a deposit to sort of guarantee the rate. But then the amount of money that you are intending to send is guaranteed at that exchange rate that's agreed, with the intention of you paying for the balance of the funds at a later date. So some people like to agree that they'll have the funds sort of the contract sort of mature and be paid for, and they align that with the completion of their property. So you buy the first 5%, pay the first 5%, and then you pay the balance upon completion or whenever it is that you want the euros available. So that's great for if you want to know exactly how many pounds it's going to cost you for the property, but maybe you don't have the funds available right away, or you just want to have that security ahead of time.
Okay, great. And as you mentioned, the pound is particularly at a good rate against the euro at the moment. So sorry, I've lost my place. How early can you book that forward contract in? Would someone be able to lock it in today for a future purchase?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can book a forward contract up to 12 months in advance if you need to. So you can essentially book it as soon as you're in the position where you feel comfortable that you want to go ahead. As I touched on, some people like to arrange the forward contract to coincide with when they are due to complete. So once you're sort of confident that you sort of want to go ahead and you want to secure the currency, yeah, you can book it any time, really.
Okay, great. And whereabouts? So how does it work in terms of where do you send the money into Portugal? Do I need to open a bank account, or are you able to send it straight to the solicitor in Portugal?
Yeah, we can send it wherever you'd like it to go. Some people like to set up a bank account themselves, for not just the property purchase, but for other other expenses that they have later. So you can do that, or you can send it directly to the solicitor. Sophia, I'm sure you can clarify later, but in a lot of cases we send directly to the vendor's solicitor when the sale takes place. But again, that can range from country to country. So yeah, we're happy to send the payment wherever it's got to go. So yeah, if it's your own account, fine. If it's directly to the solicitor, absolutely fine as well.
Okay, great. And what happens if you have a forward contract in place and for some reason, God forbid, the purchase falls through? What would happen then?
Sure. So I guess there's two scenarios there. So if you've bought the forward contract, you've agreed with us that you're going to pay us for your euros on a certain date. If the property that you're intending to buy falls through, there's two scenarios. So if you're thinking, well, I'm not buying this property anymore, but I'm still intending to buy in Portugal at some point, you can still pay us for the contract and fulfill it on the date agreed. And then you can leave the euros with us until a future date. So, if you then find another property later down the line, we'll just hold the euros on for you until they're needed later. And we can pretty much hold onto them as long as need be. So that's one scenario. In the scenario where the property fell through and then you decided, okay, actually, we're going to pull the plug on this, don't want to buy in Portugal anymore, have no use for the euros, we can cancel the contract. And then the currency can just be sold back into pounds, and that would be at the exchange rate that's available on the day. So it can be slightly more or slightly less than you were initially sold, but that's something that we'll talk to you at the time and sort of help you with that. One other option that you have is if you sort of get to the point where you were normally supposed to pay us, but maybe you don't have the funds available, you do have the option of rolling the contract as well. So if you say to us, look, let's say you're selling a property in the UK and you need the money from that property to pay for this one, and it's been delayed for whatever reason, if you can sort of come to us and let us know that happens, we can say, fine, we'll roll the contract so that we're actually going to expect the payment at a later date, and you can do that, and you just tell us whenever you need it to be rolled into. We can accommodate really any scenario if that happens.
Okay, good to know there's a bit of flexibility there.
Yes,
And I'm sure you get this question quite a lot. So why should our buyers use Smart Currency Exchange or a currency specialist and not their bank?
Yeah, so obviously buying overseas property, there's a lot of risks involved. It can be pretty complicated, and it's really helpful to have an expert on the other end of the phone to sort of guide you through the process, explain how everything works, and sort of hold your hand through the process really and make it as stress-free and painless as possible. Your banks are, some people sort of think just to go to the bank because that's what's familiar with them, but actually they don't specialize in currency exchange. If you went into your local branch at your bank, they wouldn't have a foreign currency specialist. They would be, if you said to them, I want to send money overseas, they go, yeah, sure, this is the exchange rate, and that's about as far as they could help you. Whereas we are obviously very well versed in what the currency markets do. We keep an eye on them to sort of anticipate when they may be moving in or out of your favor, and we understand what moves them and can sort of help guide you to make an informed decision as to when to send the money and everything related to it. So the bank service generally is much less comprehensive than what we can offer.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And is it just pound to euros that you deal with, or are you able to manage other currencies?
Yeah, we can do any of the major and minor currencies. So pretty much anywhere you think of that you need to send money to, we'll be able to help you with that. Obviously, if there's anything specific that you wanted to check with us, if we can sort of move that currency, then you can obviously ask a question in the chat box. Obviously, I'm assuming people looking about going to Portugal will be most looking at euros, but if there's any other questions for other currencies, then yeah, please ask and we can confirm.
Okay, lovely. And how do I know that my money is safe with Smart?
So we've been operating for 20 years now. Since 2004, we are highly regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the regulatory body managing financial organisations. And so all of your funds are held in accounts that we hold with Barclays, so a tier 1 bank. They are held in segregated client holding accounts, so at no point do they mix with business capital of Smart. So even in the very worst case scenario, if something to happen to us as an organisation, your money's protected up to an unlimited amount and will be returned to you in full in the event of anything like that happening.
Okay, that's good to know. And do you just do large transfers, or are you able to help me, let's say, paying bills overseas after I've purchased?
Yeah, absolutely. We can help with any size transfer. A lot of my clients sort of use us for the main property purchase, so the larger sum, of course, we can help with. And then they go on to set up an account over there and then send monthly amounts over or regular amounts to pay, as you say, expenses, bills, whatever. We've actually got plans in place that you can set up where you can have money coming out of your sterling account on a standing order. So each month, if you're then living out in Portugal and needing living expenses, you can take money from the UK each month automatically and have it converted. So there's lots of options available for that too.
Oh, okay, that's great. No, I was definitely thinking about people buying holiday homes. Maybe it wouldn't be their, permanent residence, so they might need to. That's good to know. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Michael. That was really insightful. Let's come over to Sophia. So, when is the ideal time for our buyers to contact a lawyer like yourself?
Okay, so I would say as soon as possible, but we also understand, and even for the purpose of presenting legal fee proposals, the best or the latest would be after having your offer accepted, and never after signing anything. Because
Okay.
as Michael said, sometimes estate agents or realtors talk about reservation agreement or reservation fee, and so we had circumstances where the reservation fee, for example, was not reimbursed to the prospective buyer, and we can try to work around that before the signature, not afterwards. So I would say before signing anything.
Okay, that definitely sounds sensible. Okay, and this might seem a little bit pessimistic, but we're just trying to hedge away from what other people make mistakes with. So, what is the biggest mistake that buyers in Portugal can make?
Well, I think the most important things would be having a good representation of their interests, and not making a due diligence analysis on the properties documents to check if the owners are legitimate owners, if they have any kinds of issues with the tax authorities or debts or anything that might compromise the sale, or at least make it a rougher path than it could be. Other thing that would be very important, and I feel like I'm always saying the same, but would be to, when setting up a budget, considering an additional around 10% in costs, like taxes, legal fees, notary fees, registration fees, just to be on the safe side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And how long can the buying process in Portugal take from, making your initial offer to the keys in your hand?
I would say that for a straightforward process, let's say a cash purchase doing in your individual name and not a company or other vehicle of investment, I would say not longer than 2 months, and in certain scenarios, less time than 2 months. With a financing process, it would be more likely to be around 3-4 months, considering an already constructed property.
Okay, so like a resale property. Cool.
Yeah.
And once a buyer's found a property and put their offer in, what can you do to help? What's your next steps?
The next steps would be to, firstly, if you don't have a Portuguese taxpayer number or a fiscal representative, because non-residents are obliged to have one in Portugal, make sure that you have that representation, which, for example, at Matlaw, we provide along with the purchase services. And then it would be either a reservation agreement if needed, or if not, we would go straight to the due diligence check and see in drafting and discussing the promissory contract. If any survey needs to be carried out and cannot be carried out, for example, during the discussion of the promissory contract, we make it a condition on the contract and then have the survey carried out in the meantime between the promissory contract and the deed, which is usually the next step.
Okay, great. And is it common to get a building survey done in Portugal? I know my partner's a building surveyor, so he would always recommend it. But I know in France it's really uncommon. So what's the Portuguese thoughts on that?
It has been becoming more common, especially due to the foreign investments that we have been registering in Portugal. And we also think it's a good thing to carry out, at least to have certain guarantees. So I would agree with your partner in the majority of the scenarios. But we also have clients that go and visit the property directly. Some clients that are builders or are used to work with this kind of transaction, and they feel secure with the property documents, the plans, what they see, and our analysis of the documents. They feel secure to do it without the survey, so it's an optional one.
Okay. And let's say something came up in the survey. Are you able to add a clause into the contract? Yeah. Okay, great.
So ideally, the survey would be carried out beforehand. If for some reason is within the promissory contract, we can have the margin to negotiate some kind of things. We had circumstances, for example, where the clients made an addendum specifying that from the survey arose a possible expense of around 10-15K in renovations or refurbishments, and then they reduce the price accordingly.
Okay, good to know. And I imagine this varies from firm to firm, but what are typical lawyer fees in Portugal?
Okay, so I would say for a straightforward process, again, cash purchase, with the common steps to be taken, right now is around 1 to 1.25% of the price. Obviously, considering when there are very lower prices of acquisitions, and also considering when the acquisition price is very high, we don't make it a linear fee.
Okay. Okay. And would that fee typically include notary fees?
No, it usually don't, because depending on the location where the deed will take place, or if it's in a notary's office, or sometimes when there's a financing process, banks demand that they are done within their offices and not with the notary, the fees would be very much different from one side to the other.
Okay, lovely. And if I'm looking to buy a property that might need some renovation, would you be able to advise on the likelihood of getting planning permission?
We can make, along with the due diligence report, when the clients already instruct us with that kind of intention or possibility, it is possible to make a planning report to understand what is allowed by the city council to be legalized, or what kind of renovations will be deemed to be legalized or not. So yes, it's possible to try to anticipate certain issues or non-issues.
Okay, lovely. And if I'm buying a property and then I want to let it out, are you able to advise on things like taxes, permits, licenses that I might need?
Yes, of course. When you want to rent a property, you have two possible scenarios. You have short-term rentals that will include anything below 1 year rentals, and long-term rentals, which usually are at least a year rental contract, with certain exceptions now with digital nomads visa and things like that, that may allow for a long-term rental to be reduced, for example, for 6 months, 4 months. When talking about short-term rentals, you will need to apply for an AL license, a local accommodation license, which have been restricted in the previous government to the issuance of new licenses for apartment units. But hopefully a brighter future will come, because the new prime minister already said that he wanted to revoke these limitations. So besides that, they are still allowed for villas and in lower density areas. for example, outside of Lisbon, outside of the Algarve, outside of Porto, the main cities, it is possible to still obtain new licenses. As per taxes, you will have the common property taxes that are paid annually. And for the local accommodation license, the former government also instituted a new extraordinary fee for the short term rentals. But this is also supposed to be revoked. So let's hope this comes along sooner rather than later.
Okay, good to know. Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe in the comments, just let us know if you're looking to move permanently or if you're going to have holiday home and kind of, because we've got some immigration questions next, so it might be useful to know. So while you do that, Sophia, what are the main visa routes for non-residents living in Portugal?
I would say there's different routes depending on the type of income, if there are active income, passive income, what kind of professional activity is developed. So that would take further analysis, but we have the D7 visa for retired people, meaning passive income. We also have still some sorts of investment visas named the golden visa, but without the real estate investment commonly known until 2022. Now we have digital nomads visa. That's also a good option, especially if you're working remotely. If you already secured an employment contract, there's also a specific visa for that. So anyone can can get in touch with Matlaw, and our immigration experts will probably know better than myself the specific visa for your specific scenario.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And for non-residents moving to Portugal or staying in Portugal, they have to follow the 90-day rule. So could you explain that for me?
Yes, of course. Any non-Schengen national or resident, in the case being, have what we call a tourist visa, whereby every 180 days they can spend 90 of them within the Schengen area. This is important to highlight because we have had contacts with prospective clients and clients itself that thought it was just for Portugal, and it is not. If you're going to France on holidays or something, these are timelines that you will have to considering when calculating the days that you still have on your tourist visa. On the 181 day, you already have another 90, so manage them well.
Okay, so let's say I have a holiday home in Portugal and I stay in France for 30 days before going there. Would they count towards that 90 days?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good to know. What are the income requirements for retirement visa? So I think that's the D7, right?
Yeah, it's the D7 one. The typical income requirements are calculated based on the national minimum wage. So basically, for the time being, at least, the national minimum wage would be of 820. So you would have to show income for the last 3 days prior to your appointment, either at the VFS or embassy, and then in Portugal for at least 12 days. 12 months, sorry. So this year is something around 11,000 euros.
Okay, sorry, kind of zoned out. And this is a common question. If my wife or husband or legal partner has an Irish passport or let's say an EU passport, can we both live in Portugal?
That is indeed a very common question, and it's a good one because sometimes, even as a UK resident or as a UK national, there are families or partners that also have other passports or, for example, only one EU passport, and the relocation process becomes very much easier for the EU national. And alongside with it, the non-EU national, the other partner, will be able to make the relocation process. The steps are very similar to any other kinds of visa, but the requirements are very different, considering that it will be a family regrouping visa. So basically, you will say, as my partner is a EU national and already lives in Portugal, I want to join him or her. And the process is very simpler, but along the same route with the appointments and the timelines and the main requirements, apart from income requirements, criminal records, investments, etc.
Okay, so you kind of go down the family reunification route rather
Yeah.
than. Okay, that's good.
Exactly.
Good to know. And what's the process of applying for a visa? How long does that typically take?
The typical process would consist in schedule an appointment at the VFS office.
Mhm.
I'm seeing my image delayed, so I'm worried that maybe you're not hearing everything clearly. So please let me know if that's the case, Rosie.
It's okay. It's stalling a little bit, but we can hear you perfectly.
Okay, that's perfect. You will schedule the appointment at the embassy or VFS in your residency country, whereby you will start the application for the Portuguese visa. And then once this is granted, they will make the appointment or at least communicate internally with our immigration offices for you to be able to come to the scheduled appointment in Portugal, and then having everything analyzed. And if you meet all the requirements, which usually after passing the VFS or embassy appointment, everything is met, then they will issue the residency card.
Okay, good to know. Thanks. And this is just a random question I'm throwing in, so apologies. Let's say that I'm applying for a Portuguese visa, but I'm living in France at the moment under the 90-day rule. Would I have to go back to the UK to have the appointment at the embassy?
If you are living, you are a French resident, correct?
No, I'm a UK resident, but living elsewhere.
Okay. No, you will have to come to your residency country.
Okay.
The appointment needs to be taken either in the country of nationality or the country of residence if they're not the same.
Okay. Okay, cool. And what are the costs and timescales of the visa process?
The other costs and timescales. The timescales, I'll say we can't give anyone, because there are certain deadlines that the authorities shall meet. From our experience, they never do, and they are very very delayed in the majority of the cases. So we try to give the worst case scenario, and then all our clients will be very much happier if it's quicker than that. Other costs to consider, it would be the fees for applying for the visa, for the bureaucracy itself. You would have to pay a fee at the VFS. Sometimes if they ask you to DHL your passport to get stamped and inserted a visa, that's a cost that you also need to consider. Or travel, in the case that you were saying, Rosie, if you're in France and then you have to travel to the UK, that's also a cost. And in the Portuguese authorities, you also have to pay the application fee.
Okay, cool. And that initial cost, would you pay that when you go for your appointment at the VFS? Yeah.
Yes, VFS, the embassy, it will depend on the city sometimes, or the country itself.
Okay, cool. And on what basis might an application be rejected?
Usually, the applications will only be rejected if you don't meet the requirements. For example, if you don't have all the documentations that they ask for, because sometimes they cannot make the proper analysis on the moment of the appointment. They also always take it to the office to have it thoroughly analyzed. And I'd say we don't have lots of scenarios where no, I don't think we don't have one client that made the appointments with us or prepared by us with the documentation that wasn't granted a visa. Even if it took time, they arise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose by using your service, you're making sure that everything is there. So
Yeah,
there's not
exactly.
going to be
That's
anything
part
missing.
that's part of the job.
Good to know. Okay, fab. Thank you. And as we haven't got our estate agent here today, I have whipped together some top viewing trip tips. So Michael and Sophia, feel free to jump in if you want to add anything. But a viewing trip is typically when you go over to Portugal and view properties. You can arrange this with an estate agent, and they will often pick you up from the airport, kind of take you here and there to view the properties. So a few tips just for while you're out there. We recommend that you rent a car. That will allow you to explore the local area in your free time. That's especially important if you haven't been to that specific area before. Then you'll get a little taste of what living in your potential neighbourhood will be like. One thing I've heard estate agents say before is before you go, especially if you're buying as a couple, decide if this trip is an exploratory trip or if you plan to buy a property and make an offer while you're out there. So, because the last thing you want is one person thinking, this is the time that they buy a property, and somebody else is just like, we're just looking. So it's good to decide on that before you go. Of course, have your questions ready to ask your estate agent. At Your Overseas Home, we have put together a viewing trip guide that you can download for free. You just have to complete a short form and it'll get emailed across. So all of these tips are in there. We do recommend that viewing trip viewers stay local. So rather than staying at a huge hotel, while it might be nice, you'll get a real feel for the area while you're staying local. Self-catering can give you insight into cost of living in Portugal, which can be really nice if you've never lived there before. And I'm sure our two experts will agree with me on this last point. Secure your lawyer and currency specialist before you're ready to make an offer. As Sophia said, she can't help you after you signed. And that can make all the difference. Obviously, if you've got their numbers on speed dial, if speed dial is still a thing, you're able to say, hey, Sophia, I'm ready to sign. Can you help me? Or Michael, let's send some money. So there's just a few there, but we'll share the link to our viewing trip guide if you wanted to read that in more detail. Okie doke. Oh.
Just to jump in, Rosie. Definitely from our perspective, we really recommend speaking to us well in advance of even going on a viewing trip. It's really good. I normally, when I first speak to a client who's opened up an account, give them a call to have a chat with them to understand what their plans are, what their budget is, really understand what their requirement is going to be, and then I can, of course, spend that time to explain how the process will work, what the client can expect when they come to the point where they are ready to sort of move currency, and it can help them make a currency plan really as well, so that if you then go on a viewing trip, you make an offer on that trip and you're like, right, I need to send a deposit. How do I do that? If you've never spoken to me, it will still be fine. We can still source it, but obviously it's much more comfortable, much easier to know exactly what you're doing. You can give me a call and say, right, we're ready to go, let's do it. And so it just makes your whole life easier.
Yeah,
it Sounds makes our lives easier as well.
Even better. Of course, like our experts are here to help you. That's why we recommend these services. So definitely take advantage of them. Before we come to your questions, there has been quite a few. I will point out, I think it's above me, but it might not be on your screen. They're nodding, so I'm assuming that's a yes. scan the QR codes above. You can either book an appointment with Matlaw, make an inquiry, and the same with Smart Currency. If you wanted to engage with their services, you can either email or scan the QR code with your phone. You just go onto the camera and take a picture. Actually, you shouldn't need to take a picture. Okay, so we'll come to some of our questions. Okay, our first one is Sophia. Henry has looked at properties which appear to have no legal status. How does one protect oneself from buying a property that doesn't have legal buildings? What is the significance of 1951 in the age of buildings and their legality?
Okay, so before 1951, the licensing processes were very different. And until then, there was nothing called as the so-called utilization license, which is a certification whereby the city council has checked the property plans, the architectural plans, the engineering plans, and make sure that everything complies with the regulations that are in force. So prior to 1951, everything is legal. However, it's also very common to have small changes that, even if small, they might be deemed to be legalized after 1951, and the majority of times it doesn't happen. So that's another thing helpful to have the view, and then with the property plans and the report that we usually provide, check if the construction is still the same, and if not, to understand if you are willing to take the risk, because nowadays the process has already been simplified again with the so-called simplex, and it's even stated on the deeds that any kind of illegalities will be assumed by the property buyers. So again, to understand if it's legalized, or even if it's not legal, if you want to take the risk, if you are secure enough or happy to proceed anyway, because the legalities will follow the property, anyone which the owner at the time where the city council noticed them.
Okay. And is there any law that requires the sellers to declare that? Or is that just something that you expect to come up in due diligence?
To declare if there are illegal constructions in a property?
Yeah.
No, there's not. That's
It's
why
not.
usually none of our promissory contracts is sent to discussion without having a warranty, whereby everything is in accordance. The existence in the property is in accordance with every kind of regulation applicable to date.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Michael, I've got one for you. Ian is asking, obviously you touched on that individuals are less likely to get the what's the word, interbank rate.
Interbank.
Yeah, thank you. Ian's asking what discount to the interbank exchange rate is realistic for?
Yeah, it's a good question. It depends, to be honest with you. It depends on a lot of factors. The biggest one being the volume of currency that you're sending. As you can imagine, we buy the currency from our counterparty banks, and the more that we buy from them, the better rate that we can get. So we're able to pass that saving on the more money that you're sending. In terms of budgeting, it also depends on if you're buying spot or if you're buying forward. The further forward into the future you buy, that affects your rate. So the further forward that you buy into the future, you can expect to be slightly further from the interbank rate. What I'd recommend is, if you've got an account set up, or if you're planning to, as soon as you sort of are set up and you speak to either me or one of my colleagues, we can have a conversation with you about your individual budgets, what your what your timelines are, and we can actually give you a more accurate indication without sort of knowing more information. It's kind of like asking how long is a piece of string. So I'd recommend sort of have that chat with me, and I can answer that question more accurately.
Okay, thanks. Sophia, we have another question from Henry. He's considering renting a property before he buys. So he's asking, what is the law regarding deposits for rentals, the notice period, and is there any standardized rules around having pets in a rental property?
Okay, so the rental. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you. Your video just keeps going.
Okay,
You
perfect.
fine.
It's okay. So when renting a property, the deposit is usually reimbursed in the end of the rental period because it is inserted for any kind of damages or repairs that the landlord needs to make if the tenants don't hand over the property in due state. So when you hand over the property, if everything is fine, the deposit shall be reimbursed accordingly. The notice period to terminate a contract will depend on the time of the contract itself and what you agree when signing the rental agreement. Standard procedure would be 12-month period, and until the ninth month, you will have to inform the landlord that by the time the end of the contract arises, you will not want to renovate it. If in other scenario it is 1 year non-renewable, you don't need to do anything. In the end of the year, you'll go on your merry way, and the landlord as well.
Okay.
If there's not any kind of mutual agreement, okay, anything with a mutual agreement is made as long as both parties agree with. With regards to pets, there's no general regulations about it. There are tenants or buildings that are pet friendly and others that don't.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Okay. Next question is from Michael again. Simon's asking about smart currencies fees for currency exchange. He's asking, hypothetically, 700 grand in sterling, would you charge a standard fee or would you make your turn on the rate?
Yeah, so there's no fees for the service, so it's all of our costs are built into the exchange rate we offer you. And as I said, that exchange rate on offer is dependent on those factors that I listed before. So yeah, there's no fee in the sense that if you said to me, right, I need to move 700,000. Well, let's say you wanted a specific figure in euros. Let's say you had an offer accepted for a specific euro amount. Let's say it's 700,000 euros. I would then quote you the exchange rate to buy that amount and what the cost in sterling therefore works out to. And that sterling cost is exactly what you pay. So there's no additional fees on top of that. So it keeps it nice and clean, just having that one figure that you pay.
Okay. And okay, yeah, sorry. So the way that you make your money is built into that exchange rate.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So I touched on it when I was speaking earlier, but the rate that you see if you were to Google the interbank rate, as I've mentioned, we are able to buy not at that rate but close to it, and then we of course have to factor in a margin ourselves to make a profit, keep the lights on, and then we then sell the currency to the customer at a rate lower than the market rate, and that difference is where our profit is made as a company.
Okay, Fab, thank you. Okay, back to Sophia again. Sorry, I didn't plan this. This is just the order the questions are coming in.
It's okay.
Okay, we have Gilbert says hello from Sweden. Lovely to see you, Gilbert. He's wondering how common it is with communal water in rural areas. What's the typical cost of drilling for your own water? We're worried about the stories of water shortage in Portugal. Are you able to help with that?
That's a very specific question. There are city council connection for almost every urban areas. I would say where there is like a small village. Usually, you have the city council connection to all the properties. Sometimes what there's less, it's regarding with sewage and things like that. That's why some people use septic tanks or boreholes. With regards to the water shortage in Portugal, all even with the shortage, everyone is still being able to water the rural areas and um, having your domestic use guaranteed. So
Okay.
let's hope we can keep it that way.
Okay, lovely. Ian has asked, what are the components of the 10% contingency that Sophia referred to?
Okay. That's a very important question. When you are setting up a budget to acquire a property, let's say if you are acquiring a property and you want to spend 100,000, you need to be assured that that cannot be the purchase price itself. Or if that's the property purchase price, then try to have another 10% to pay the property transfer tax that is due on the deed. The stamp duty, it's also due at the deed. You will have to pay preferably but optionally legal fees, the notary fees, registration fees, and when dealing with the smart currency, you also need to have that into account, because the money that you are willing to spend in pounds sometime will be better, will be higher in euros, and that's also important to take into account.
Yeah, definitely. So I think tell me if I'm wrong, Michael, but I think that's where a forward contract could help, so that time when you're between your two contracts, your initial and your final, you would be covered. You would know that your rate wouldn't move. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you can achieve through a forward contract, to know this is the rate I'm going to achieve. So this is exactly how many euros my pounds will buy, so that you can then budget ahead of time and not have to worry about market fluctuations moving that number all the time.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Ian's asking Sophia, if a UK citizen owns a holiday home in Portugal, is it a good idea to have a will in Portugal?
Yes, it is. Actually, every time we have clients acquiring properties in Portugal, what we always advise afterwards would be to draft a will in Portugal, at least, because to liaise any estate planning or succession or probate when the time comes, hopefully very, very later on, it is much easier to have it more expediting in Portugal that way, because the notary itself already acknowledges the law you choose to regulate your succession, which, being a UK citizen, your national law, it's much more allowable than the Portuguese one. So don't try to use the Portuguese one. You'll not be more in a more favorable regime.
Thanks. Rosemary's asking, if I'm still working but my partner is retired, would we have to apply for different visas?
Okay, so you can go from two ways. If you want to apply at the same time, both of you will have different visas. But for example, if you are willing to wait that your partner receives her D7 visa, her or his D7 visa, then you can go through the family regrouping visa as well. So there's these two scenarios.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just replying to a question. Where was I? Ian's also asking, how much is the do you have to pay for the license to rent out a property in Portugal?
Yes, you have to pay the application fee for the city council, which the majority of the ones that we have asked for lots of city councils are not very high. I would say below 100 euros easily, and fulfill and have other costs, but with fulfilling the legal requirements, for example, fire extinguishers and kits that the regulations oblige you to have in your property to be able to rent it out. And for the renewal, sorry, Rosie, I just checked that the question is longer. The licenses are renewed every 2 years. It's more of a confirmation, but right now we need to show that you are exploring the business activity so that the license is renewed.
Okay, thank you. This is a great question. I've not had this one before from Henry. If we see a property that interests us, particularly if it's abandoned, would you, as a legal firm, be able to find the owner, the beneficial owner?
We don't have a public registry that immediately tells us who is the owner, but being around and within the area, we can contact the local authorities or the tax office or the land registrar and try to get the information to be available to us if they don't mess with us about the data protection regulations.
Anthony's asking, I'm just saying he might have missed your comments on this earlier. So could you just clarify, are you able to rent out your holiday home to tourists? So I assume short-term lets.
Yes, you are. As long as for being a new license, it needs to be issued either in a lower density area outside the big cities, or for a villa instead of an apartment unit. They are still issuing new licenses.
Okay, thank you. And Simon is asking, can I work remotely if I work for a UK-based company? Yeah. I assume this might be digital nomad visa.
Yeah, probably. It would be the most direct visa, I believe, for the information that we have. But yes, you can. We also have clients that applied for other visas as long as the UK company makes the required discounts and etc., you will declare it in your annual tax return in Portugal and you shall not be double taxed.
Okay, great. We are coming up to our time, so I'll just ask Michael one more question. Patty's asking, am I able to see the rate that Smart Currency Exchange offers at any time?
So if you have an account set up, you can set up an online access to our online portal as well. So if you wanted to just go on in your own time and sort of get a rate to buy whatever amount of currency it is, yes, you can. Generally, you can use our online platform for payments up to £40,000. And so if you're looking to get an exchange rate for anything larger than that, we'd recommend that you call and speak to us. And generally, as I touched on before, the higher volume you're looking to move, generally the more favourable the rates are.
Okay, fab. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of our experts, Sophia and Michael, for all your tips and advice. To all of our viewers, we strongly recommend that you get in touch with our experts directly to discuss your requirements in detail. As I said, the information is just there, or we'll send it in an email tomorrow so you can copy it straight away. Before we finish, I would like to invite you to leave us a review on Trustpilot if you found this webinar helpful. Every 5-star review counts. Thanks again, and thank you so much to our experts. It's been lovely chatting with you. And to all our viewers, happy property hunting. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Rosie. Bye.